At over 29,000 feet above sea level, Mount Everest is known as the roof of the world. It's a place where the air is too thin to breathe, where the cold can kill in minutes, and where a single wrong step means certain death. In 2003, a young couple set out to conquer the mountain together, believing love and determination could carry them where few had ever gone. But when they vanished without a trace, Everest became not a dream, but a graveyard. For 2 long years, their families waited with no answers, no bodies, nothing but silence. Then, in 2005, a ranger stumbled across something in the ice that changed everything and revealed a truth more haunting than anyone could have imagined. This is not just another story of climbers lost on Everest. This is the chilling tale of a couple whose love was tested against the deadliest mountain on Earth, and the shocking discovery that would finally bring their story back to the world. The couple was James Whitaker, 32, and his wife, Emily Foster, 29, both from Colorado, both passionate climbers who had spent years preparing for what they believed would be the ultimate adventure. They weren't reckless thrill seekers. Friends described them as careful, methodical, and deeply committed not only to climbing but to each other. James was a paramedic, strong and steady, while Emily was a photographer whose dream was to capture Everest's breathtaking beauty through her lens. Together they had saved for years, trained relentlessly, and joined an expedition scheduled for the spring season of 2003, when weather windows were at their narrowest but most forgiving. From the start, their climb was meant to be symbolic. James carried a small velvet pouch containing his grandmother's wedding ring, planning to place it at the summit as a tribute. Emily carried her camera, determined to document every step. Their friends back home followed their journey through occasional satellite phone calls. On May 19, 2003, the couple checked in from Camp 4, the notorious death zone, perched at nearly 26,000 feet. They were tired but optimistic. James told a friend over the phone, "We'll see you from the top." Those were the last words anyone ever heard from him. When the couple failed to return to Camp 4 within 48 hours, concern turned to alarm. Other climbers reported brutal winds near the summit and whiteout conditions that had forced several teams to turn back. James and Emily, however, had pressed on. Their Sherpa guide, Tenzing Dorje, had begged them to wait another day, but James insisted the weather would clear. When Tenzing was forced to retreat due to frostbite, James and Emily had continued alone. They were last spotted by another climber less than 1,000 feet from the summit, moving slowly but steadily toward the peak. After that, they disappeared into the blizzard. Search efforts were mounted immediately, but conditions made it nearly impossible. Helicopters couldn't reach that altitude. Ground teams faced avalanches, shifting ice, and oxygen starvation. For weeks, volunteers combed the slopes, but no trace of James or Emily was ever found. Their families clung to hope, but as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, hope gave way to silence. Everest had claimed them, just as it had claimed hundreds before. Their names were added to the growing list of climbers swallowed by the mountain, their bodies hidden beneath ice and snow, preserved but unreachable in the frozen tomb of the Himalayas. For 2 years, nothing. Emily's parents said every time the phone rang, they hoped it was her. James's brother admitted he still dreamed of the moment James would come walking up the driveway, frostbitten maybe, but alive. Instead, there was only emptiness, a silence as cold as Everest itself. And here's where I need to stop you for a second, because this is why you need to hit subscribe right now. Stories like this vanish when no one pays attention. Families are left to suffer in silence, their loved ones' memories buried with the snow. If you believe their voices deserve to be heard, if you believe truth matters, click subscribe this very moment, because forgetting is exactly what tragedy feeds on. Then, in May of 2005, a park ranger named Ang Charing, patrolling an area near the North Col, spotted something unusual. Sticking out of the ice was the corner of a brightly colored fabric, tattered but unmistakably human-made. Carefully, Ang and his team began clearing the snow. What they uncovered stopped them cold. It was a jacket, red and black, still zipped. Inside the jacket was a skeletal torso, frozen solid, the arms curled as though shielding the chest. Nearby, half buried in ice, lay a climbing boot still attached to a leg bone. Within hours, word spread down the mountain. An American couple had been missing since 2003. Could this be them? The body was carefully removed from the ice and brought down to base camp, where forensic teams confirmed what many suspected. The remains belonged to James Whitaker. His identification papers, still sealed in a waterproof pouch, confirmed it beyond doubt. Beside him, buried deeper in the ice, searchers discovered Emily's camera, frozen, battered, but intact. And when the film was developed, it revealed a chilling window into their final hours. The camera was a battered Nikon F4, its casing dented from the ice, but the film surprisingly preserved. When the photographs were developed, investigators and the families braced themselves for what they might see. At first, the pictures showed what everyone expected: snow-capped peaks, the jagged ridges of the Khumbu icefall, and smiling shots of James and Emily posing in their bulky downsuits. But as the roll advanced, the images became darker, more haunting. One frame showed James with a serious expression, his goggles frosted over, lips cracked from the dry air. Another showed Emily pointing toward an ominous bank of clouds creeping toward the summit. The last few photographs sent chills through the room. In one, Emily sat on the ground, her head bowed, her face pale with exhaustion. In the next, James appeared to be checking the oxygen tank regulator, his glove half off, revealing swollen, frost-bitten fingers. The final photo was the most disturbing. It showed the jagged ridge below the summit, the world shrouded in a whiteout, with James and Emily holding hands in the frame as though determined to push forward, despite the storm closing in around them. Those final images were time-stamped just hours after their last radio contact. Experts concluded that the couple had reached a critical decision point: turn back and live, or press on and risk everything. And they chose to press on. For Emily's parents, the photos were a mixture of heartbreak and peace. Her mother whispered through tears, "At least we know they were together until the very end." But for James's brother, the images raised more questions than answers. Why didn't they turn back? Why did they think they could make it? He asked. Forensic examination of James's body suggested he had collapsed not far from the ridge, likely from exhaustion and altitude sickness. But Emily's remains were nowhere to be found. The search expanded in the weeks after James's discovery, combing every crevasse and icefall near the North Col. Rangers believed she had either fallen into a hidden crevasse or had been buried under one of Everest's sudden avalanches. Still, one clue remained. Emily's camera had been found beside James. If she had left him, why would the camera have stayed behind? Theories spread rapidly. Some believed Emily had tried to descend alone after James collapsed, hoping to find help. Others thought she had stayed with him until the very end, succumbing just out of sight, her body swallowed by the glacier. Caroline Foster, Emily's younger sister, said something that echoed in every interview afterward. She would never leave him. If his body was there, then she was there too. In the aftermath, the families demanded answers, and investigators dug deeper into the couple's expedition logs. That's when an unsettling detail emerged. Before leaving Camp 4, James had logged their oxygen levels, and both tanks were dangerously low. Other climbers later confirmed they had warned James about his supply, but he insisted they would be fine. That decision, perhaps out of determination to keep their promise of reaching the summit together, sealed their fate. But Everest wasn't finished with the Whitakers. In the fall of 2005, just months after James's body was recovered, a team of Sherpas found something else at a lower altitude: a torn glove, a broken ice axe, and a strand of blonde hair tangled in the snow. DNA tests confirmed it belonged to Emily. The items had been carried down the slope by ice movement, suggesting her body lay somewhere still hidden in the glacier. The Whitaker and Foster families held a joint memorial service, laying to rest the couple's dream and their tragedy. And here's where I need you to stop scrolling for just one moment. Because James and Emily's story isn't just about Everest. It's about the silence that follows tragedy. Do you know how many families never even get the fragments the Whitakers did? Thousands of climbers have vanished into the world's most dangerous places, never to be heard from again. Their stories fade because no one keeps them alive. If you care about truth, if you care about memory, hit subscribe right now. Don't be the reason another name is forgotten in the snow. The photographs from Emily's camera sparked an international debate about the risks of Everest climbs. Critics argued that too many inexperienced climbers were attempting the summit, driven more by dreams of glory than by the harsh realities of the mountain. But James and Emily weren't novices. They were seasoned climbers. What doomed them wasn't recklessness. It was a storm that swallowed them whole. Still, one mystery refused to fade: the condition of James's body. For 2 years, it had lain exposed in the ice, yet many of his belongings remained intact. Rangers noted that the waterproof pouch containing his identification appeared to have been moved more recently than 2 years before. Had someone found his body earlier and kept silent? Some whispered that another expedition may have discovered James and Emily in 2003 or 2004, but, fearing bad publicity, had chosen not to report it. Caroline Foster raised the question in an interview. If someone knew and said nothing, they robbed us of 2 years of grieving. Despite the speculation, no evidence confirmed the theory. But the uncertainty only deepened the mystery of James and Emily's final hours. As more expeditions climbed Everest in the years that followed, climbers often reported seeing James's frozen figure along the route, a grim reminder of the mountain's price. Known among Sherpas as the Guardian, his body remained visible for a time before shifting ice buried it once again. 2 years after the discovery, in 2007, an even more shocking recovery was made, one that would finally answer the question of what had happened to Emily Foster and why her story still haunts Everest today. In the spring of 2007, a climbing team from New Zealand was making its ascent on the North Col when one of the Sherpas noticed something unusual, half buried in the ice about 200 feet from where James's body had once been recovered. At first, they thought it was just debris from an old expedition. Everest is littered with oxygen bottles, tattered tents, and abandoned gear. But as they drew closer, the sight froze them in place. A blue down jacket, its fabric weathered but unmistakably human, protruded from the glacier. The Sherpa called for help, and together they carefully dug through the snow. What they uncovered was the body of a woman, curled slightly to the side, her frozen hand still clutching a fragment of rope. Her face was obscured by ice, but the blonde hair peeking from beneath the hood told them immediately who she was. It was Emily Foster. News of the discovery spread down the mountain in hours. The families were contacted, and DNA confirmation quickly followed. At last, Emily had been found, just as Caroline had always believed, not far from James, still tethered to the rope they had shared on their climb. The Sherpas reported that the rope between them had snapped, likely under the pressure of the storm and shifting ice. That detail devastated Caroline. They promised each other they'd never let go, she said. And even when the rope broke, I believe their spirits held on to each other. The position of Emily's body gave investigators chilling insight into their final hours. She appeared to have been trying to pull James to his feet when exhaustion overtook her. The broken rope told the rest of the story, a desperate attempt to stay connected until the very end. Inside her jacket pocket, searchers found something unexpected: Emily's notebook, wrapped carefully in a plastic bag. The pages were water-damaged, but fragments were still legible. The last entry, scrawled shakily in pencil, read, "Storm too strong. James weak. We stay together. Always." Those words became the headline of every news story that followed. The Whitaker and Foster families were finally able to bury the couple side by side in Colorado, fulfilling the wish James had written in a letter years earlier. "If I don't make it back, bury me with Emily." For a brief moment, the discovery seemed to bring closure. But for many, it only deepened the haunting aura surrounding the mountain. Because here's the truth. Everest doesn't give back its dead easily. Bodies that surface one year may vanish again the next, carried away by avalanches or swallowed by crevasses. The fact that both James and Emily were found was extraordinary. But the chilling reality is that hundreds of others remain up there, silent markers on the frozen slopes, their stories untold. And here's where I have to ask you directly. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe these people deserve to be remembered, not forgotten in the snow, then you need to hit subscribe right now. Don't scroll past thinking someone else will do it, because if you don't, these names will vanish all over again, just like the snow covers their bodies. In the aftermath of Emily's recovery, questions resurfaced about the risks climbers take. Some asked why couples would choose to climb together when the mountain is unforgiving to even the strongest solo climbers. But their friends insisted James and Emily had always said they'd either stand on the summit together or not at all. They weren't reckless, one fellow climber explained. They were in love, and they believed love could get them through. The story of James and Emily sparked a flood of interest from journalists, filmmakers, and historians. Documentaries featured their photographs, their final notebook entry, and the harrowing details of their last climb. For many, the couple came to symbolize both the dream and the nightmare of Everest. Yet among all the coverage, one fact kept surfacing. If the ranger in 2005 hadn't spotted that torn fabric in the ice, James and Emily's story might never have been told. Their bodies would still be locked in the mountain, their families still trapped in limbo. Caroline Foster has since said, "The hardest part wasn't losing them, it was not knowing. Not knowing for 2 years if they were alive, if they suffered, if they were alone." That's what Everest does. It doesn't just take people, it takes away the truth. By late 2007, both families had established a foundation in James and Emily's names, raising awareness about the dangers of Everest and helping fund rescue missions for stranded climbers. They hoped their tragedy might save others. But as Caroline pointed out, Everest's danger wasn't just in the snow and ice. The danger, she said, is believing it won't happen to you. Yet even as they tried to move forward, whispers lingered in the climbing community. Some Sherpas claimed they had seen signs of the couple long before 2005, but were discouraged from reporting them because expeditions feared bad press. Others suggested the snapped rope might not have broken naturally but had been cut, though no evidence ever supported that theory. Still, the questions remain, echoing every time another climber disappears into the white silence. And for those who listen closely, the mountain itself seems to whisper the truth, that love, determination, and courage aren't always enough to survive the deadliest place on Earth. The recovery of Emily's body and her final notebook entry brought the story of James and Emily Foster to the world stage, but Everest's grip on their memory did not loosen. In the years following 2007, their names became part of the mountain's haunting folklore, told in hushed voices among climbers who gathered at base camp. Guides pointed out the area near the North Col where they had been found, describing it as both sacred ground and a chilling reminder that even the best prepared climbers can vanish in an instant. For the Whitaker and Foster families, closure was bittersweet. They finally had their loved ones home, but the details of how James and Emily had spent their final hours gnawed at them. Emily's notebook had ended with the words, "We stay together, always." Yet the Sherpas who recovered her body reported that she had been found at a slight distance from James, suggesting the rope snapped just before they both succumbed to the cold. For Caroline, that detail was unbearable. "I imagine her trying to wake him up, trying to pull him back to his feet, and then realizing it was too late," she said through tears. In Colorado, their funerals drew hundreds, many of them fellow climbers. Photographs from Emily's camera were displayed alongside her notebooks, showing the world the beauty they had captured before the storm. One image of James grinning at Camper 4 with the peak behind him became the face of their legacy. Beneath it was Emily's final line, "We stay together, always." Those words etched themselves into the memory of everyone who heard their story. But even as memorials ended and families tried to heal, Everest continued to loom. Journalists asked whether the couple's recovery was luck or fate. Why had their bodies been found when so many others remained hidden forever? Some suggested it was because they had stayed together, bound by love, making it easier for searchers to locate them. Others believed their discovery was a warning from the mountain itself, reminding climbers of the price it demands. The Whitaker Foster Foundation, founded in their memory, quickly became a resource for climbers and their families. It provided funds for search and recovery operations, survival training, and even mental health support for those who returned haunted by the things they had seen. Yet Caroline admitted that the foundation's work was born from pain. "Every time we fund another search," she said, "I think about how no one searched far enough for James and Emily when it mattered most. And here's where I need to speak directly to you, because their story isn't just about Everest, it's about silence. Do you realize how many families are still waiting for answers, just like Caroline once did? How many parents and siblings sit by the phone year after year, hoping for a call that never comes? You can stop that silence by subscribing right now. Don't walk away from this screen thinking you'll come back later. Hit subscribe. Because every view, every share, keeps these stories alive. And without you, they vanish all over again." In the climbing world, James and Emily's deaths sparked heated debates. Some argued that couples should never attempt Everest together, fearing emotional bonds might cloud judgment in moments of crisis. Others countered that love had given James and Emily the strength to push further than most could endure. But in truth, both sides admitted the same grim fact. The mountain doesn't care. Love, skill, preparation, none of it guarantees survival when a storm rolls in at 28,000 feet. By 2010, their story had been featured in multiple documentaries. Climbers spoke of James's determination, Emily's artistry, and the haunting photographs that captured their descent into the storm. One film, Frozen Hearts on Everest, ended with Emily's voice reading her last notebook entry, a recording from an earlier trip. Viewers described it as one of the most heartbreaking moments in climbing history. Yet for all the awareness their story brought, the mountain itself remained relentless. Every year, new climbers attempted the summit, and every year, some never returned. Guides pointed to James and Emily's story as a cautionary tale, yet still, Everest claimed more lives. Caroline once said in an interview, "It's like the mountain is alive. It doesn't just take them, it keeps them." That eerie sense of the mountain keeping what it takes haunted not only the families but also the climbers who passed near the site of James and Emily's recovery. Some reported feeling an uncanny presence there, as if they weren't alone. One Sherpa confessed, "When I pass that place, I always whisper a prayer. I feel they are still there, watching." Whether you believe in spirits or not, one fact is undeniable. Their story changed the way the world looked at Everest. It was no longer just about risk and reward. It was about love, loss, and the cruel silence of the mountain. And still, the glacier holds secrets. Rangers admit that shifting ice may one day reveal other belongings of the Whitakers. Perhaps Emily's missing ring or James's grandmother's keepsake. Or maybe, like so many others, those items will remain buried forever, locked away in Everest's frozen vault. Years after James and Emily Foster were finally laid to rest, their story continues to echo in the halls of Everest's lore. Guides still point to the North Col and tell climbers, that's where love proves stronger than fear, but not stronger than the mountain. Their photographs, their notebook, their final rope, it all became symbols of the fragile line between determination and disaster. Caroline Foster, now older but still carrying her sister's memory, visits schools and mountaineering clubs, telling their story not to scare people away from adventure, but to remind them of the stakes. "Don't mistake courage for invincibility," she says. "My sister was brave. James was strong. But Everest was stronger." For the Whitakers, the pain of losing James has never faded, but the closure of bringing him home allowed them to grieve properly. His father once said, standing over his son's grave, "The mountain didn't take them apart. They went together, and that's how we'll always remember them." That sentiment, both heartbreaking and comforting, has been echoed countless times by those who tell their story. And still, Everest takes more. Since James and Emily's disappearance, dozens of other climbers have vanished into its frozen heights, many never to be seen again. Their bodies lie out there still, silent markers along the route to the top of the world. Rangers and Sherpas admit they sometimes stumble across them, frozen in place as though waiting, eyes glazed with snow. Each one has a story. Each one has a family still waiting for the call that never comes. That's why James and Emily's recovery mattered. Not just for their families, but for every family still waiting. It proved that sometimes, with enough persistence, with enough luck, the mountain does give something back. But only sometimes. And I want you to pause right here. Because this is where most people scroll past thinking, that was a sad story, and then move on. Don't do that. Don't be that person. If you walk away now, you're letting stories like James and Emily's fade into the snow. Subscribe. Stay with us. Because if you don't, these names vanish forever. Don't let the silence win. Their story also serves as a lesson for every future climber. Prepare beyond what you think is necessary. Double-check your oxygen. Respect the warnings of those who've gone before you. And most importantly, understand that Everest isn't conquered. It's endured. Those who survive don't beat the mountain. The mountain allows them to leave. James and Emily didn't lack preparation or courage. They lacked mercy from a place that knows none. As for the legacy they left behind, it is written not only in their photographs and journals, but in the quiet determination of their families. The Whitaker Foster Foundation has since helped dozens of climbers survive where James and Emily could not. Search missions funded by the foundation have brought other missing climbers home, giving their families the closure that once felt impossible. Caroline once admitted, "Every time someone else is found, I feel like it's Emily guiding them back." In the climbing community, their story remains a cautionary tale told to every new group of adventurers. Sherpas still whisper prayers as they pass the North Col, honoring not just James and Emily, but all who rest in Everest's frozen silence. Some climbers claim that on quiet nights near Camp 4, you can hear faint voices carried by the wind. Others dismiss it as imagination, but Caroline believes, if they're still up there in spirit, I know they're together. Always. And so, the tale of James Whitaker and Emily Foster is not just a tragedy, it is a testament to love, to endurance, to the human spirit that dares to dream even when the dream is deadly. Their final words, scrawled in the storm, live on. We stay together, always. A reminder that even in the face of Everest, love can defy the silence, though never escape the cost. The mountain still holds many secrets. Perhaps someday another climber will stumble upon something else of James and Emily's. A ring, a page, a keepsake frozen in time. But until then, their story is told not in what was found, but in the echo of their choice. To climb together, to face the storm together, and to remain together forever on the roof of the world.